Catholic. This is our first episode, so we really appreciate you giving us a chance and listening to what we have to offer to you. Analog Catholic is a podcast dedicated to technology, entertainment, media, social media, and all things related. It comes from the perspective of me, Rob, and my co host, Ben, and our lives as Catholic men trying to live and navigate this world as best we can in the intermixing of technology and faith. For more episodes, blog posts, and our shop, you can go to analogcatholic.com. If you like our episode, you like what we do, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Welcome, everyone, to Analog Catholic. I'm Rob, and I'm joined by my co host.
Ben.
Join us every week as we discuss tech, media, entertainment, the internet, and really just all things under the umbrella of technology. So maybe one day we just talk about like the printing press. I don't know. We'll see. But either way, it's always going to be done through a Catholic perspective. Ben and I are both faithful Catholic men, but also we currently work in ministry for the church as a whole, Church TM. And from that influences our perspective on things and also just the way we approach entertainment and culture. So Ben, what are we going to talk about today? What do you want to throw at us right now?
I want to talk about Johannes Gutenberg today. You
Really?
know what he invented?
I'm gonna go on a limb here and say the printing press.
No, that was Eli
Ah,
Whitney.
dang it. Uh Wait, he was in the cotton gin?
Yeah,
I don't know if we're gonna talk about the cotton gin, but
that's technology.
yeah, you want to talk about the
Innovative.
economic implications of that, or you know,
I mean, it all leads to today.
I'm anti technology, so
Yeah.
I think we need to go back to honestly, I was gonna say stone tools, but that's a little too much for me. That's a little too much. Cooking my food, really pushing the envelope there. More of a
Right.
raw primal guy. That's a trend now. Have you seen that? Have you seen this people? There's people that like starting to eat meat, eat their meat raw.
No, I've not seen that.
Oh yeah, it's not huge yet. It's like a subset of the carnivore diet people,
Oh,
where now they're eating their meat raw. So,
wow.
you know,
It's pretty hardcore. So that's welcome to the podcast. Thank you for listening.
see you next time. No, so I think today, being the first episode of this new adventure we've gone on, if you're a new listener, Ben and I had a podcast together previously called Podcast Pending. It was sort of a smorgasbord of different topics every week, and we had fun with it. We had a huge following in Germany. Um, really came in during the true crime episode we did, so really says a lot about Germans there.
Yeah, shout
Uh,
out to the German listeners.
Yeah, love our German listeners, by the way.
Yeah.
And they, and so from there, we took what we learned from that, we refined it into a more succinct podcast. Succinct's not the right word. A podcast. Oh,
Thematic.
yeah, thematic. Yeah, that's a good word for it. A podcast that knows what it is. It has a more concrete identity. We'll say that.
Right.
Uh, so
And I think we found ourselves with Podcast Pending talking about media and technology and Catholicism like every episode. So
yeah, that was our
that's essentially what this is.
that was our safety net. Whenever we ran out of steam on the specific topic, we just immediately transitioned into social media or technology. So really, we kind of sat down and said, what do we like talking about? Probably that. So that was the genesis of this podcast. Um,
We have a shop available if you're
I'm
interested.
plugging the shop already. I haven't even done the
Yeah, plug in
episode
the
yet.
shop. If you can already tell you're going to be a huge fan, head over to analogcatholic.com. Click on the shop page.
Yeah,
Big stuff on there.
the shop is actually cool. The swag we have is nice. If you like tote bags for female listeners, if you're a male listener, it's okay if you get a tote bag. You don't have to worry about that. But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it was a suggestion of my wife, and so I just associate that now with a feminine product. Um,
They're
and
actually
then
really cool, the tote bags.
yeah, there you go. It's cool, so don't be afraid to buy a tote
Yeah.
bag.
The mugs are great. Every single episode, Robert and I will be using the branded Analog Catholic mugs while
That's
we
true.
while we talk.
Except for
So
this
if
episode,
you want
because
to
I
be
don't
like
have mine
us,
yet.
you don't, well, if you want to be like us, buy a mug and you can be just like you can join the conversation.
Right now, I'm using a mug that has a different podcast brand on it. Uh,
Really?
yeah, I won't say which one though. Not podcast pending. We never had those,
Oh,
but a really popular podcast we both listen to.
yeah. I don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
But
Uh,
no. Oh, I do know what you're talking about.
okay, yeah.
But if you want podcast pending stickers, they're still
Oh,
available, but they're very expensive.
yeah. That's they're now gone into the out of market pricing. So
They're vintage.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's at least $300 per sticker. Some would say. I don't know actual pricing. All right, let's get on with today's show. All right,
All right.
I think to start, as we should start with all things, is introducing ourselves. So we're going to introduce ourselves under the guise of our thoughts on technology, the internet, social media, and entertainment in a general kind of way. And maybe we could talk about how that ties into our Catholic faith. Ben, why don't you start us off? Why don't you
Oh,
tell me? Why don't you tell me? Here, I'll give you a leading question. Why don't you tell me why you have a dumb phone?
oh.
We'll have an episode on smartphones and phones in general later, but like let's open up with this. Why do you as a man? That's irrelevant. Why do you as a person have a dumb phone and why and which one do you have and all that good stuff?
Yes. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate the leading question. My name is Ben. I have a dumb phone. I have a light phone, which I enjoy. I had a flip phone for a couple of years, and then I transitioned to the light phone. Part of that, I did have a smartphone. I found myself with the smartphone being very distracted, and I actually made the switch during the dreaded COVID pandemic, when I was basically living in a church and doing school remotely. And I was kind of like, I don't really leave this building because the only places I go are to like hang out with my roommates or go to church or do schoolwork, and schoolwork is also here. So I think the convenience of the phone oftentimes that I found was when I was on the go and I needed to do stuff, I was like, I got this phone. But when I was living in a church during COVID and I wasn't doing anything else, I was like, I always have my computer with me. And so I made the switch to a flip phone. And it was great because you can't like reach in your pocket and distract yourself for hours. I did like to play this fun game on my flip phone where there were like nine different applications, and I would like use the arrow keys to go diagonally quickly through the applications just over and over again. So I did do that to distract myself, but it does remove a lot of distractions from your life. And I think the phone certainly has a strong power over you. And I think I didn't totally know what that was until I stopped having a smartphone. And I would not go back. Um, and the light phone, which I made the switch to, is a very modern take on the dumb phone. It has a lot more features, but it has an e-ink screen, and it's really hard to text because the screen is so small. And it's, yeah, a little bit more high tech, but also still not very distracting. So I think it keeps me present and it keeps me with the people around me. And I think it really improved my REM cycle as well.
Oh, I like what you did there with the REM cycle thing.
Thank you.
That's a huge point because so many people go to bed staring at their phones. They wake up first thing look at is their phones, and it's just like really bad for your body. It's bad for your circadian rhythm. There's some good material coming out there about the effects of blue light on people's body and circadian rhythm for sure, but there's some connections there some are seeing between like exposure to the blue light and then cancer. and even insulin resistance and obesity and diabetes. So it's crazy. But I I've always respected Ben. Ben, I've always respected
Oh,
you
thank you,
for
Robert.
your switch from smartphone to dumb phone. That was like part of your character, those few years before you had the light phone, but while you had a flip phone. You'd flip it open dramatically, you'd flourish it, as a status symbol almost that, hey, look at
Yeah.
me, I don't have a smartphone.
I liked hanging up on people. It
That
was a lot
was,
funner than my
yeah,
current phone.
it was satisfying to watch you hang up on people. Uh, and yeah, it was something I didn't do. Well, my job at the time, um, I needed a smartphone. I know it sounds like an excuse, but I was a focus missionary, and so you so I know missionaries who had dumb phones, and their job got hard because the way to talk to students, the primary purpose of being a focus missionary, is on social media, is texting, is being available, and smartphones are the way that you do that nowadays. It's the way to stay connected to the people in the culture in a convenient way. And I think this is the big thing for me. So I have a smartphone right now, I have an iPhone. And there was a time last year where I switched for like 2 weeks to a flip phone and then a cellular enabled iPad. And I did that because I wanted basically what Ben was saying that he had, which was a sense of freedom from the phone. And I achieved that, I think, for the most part. I really enjoyed just like maybe I had to go to Walmart or something and I just had my flip phone on me. Um, and what are you going to do with that? Nothing. It's just there to be a phone or a texting device. And there was like a sense of being more present to just the world. But again, the job I had at that time, which I was no longer a focus missionary, but it was still a job that required me to have um, the need for more constant and consistent connection. Unfortunately, it was just the nature of the job uh, put me in a position where I was like, okay, the cellular enabled iPad's convenient when I have it with me, but I don't always have it with me, and I just times where I need the functionality of it, and I don't want to be lugging around an iPad now all the time. Um, so I went back to a smartphone, and yeah, hate it ever since. I hate smartphones. But what I've currently done with my smartphone, because I'm trying to wean myself off smartphones, is I have an iPad now. It's not a cellular enabled iPad, it's just a Wi-Fi iPad. But I basically took every app off my phone that's not for messaging or communications, or like utility stuff, like the Wi-Fi router has an app, or my bank has an app, like that kind of stuff, like is on my iPhone. But then all the other apps are on my iPad, and it's Wi-Fi enabled, so I have a hotspot on my phone, so I could theoretically use it whenever. But it's in my backpack most of the time. It's in a drawer most of the time when I'm home, unless I need it for its functionality. And just doing that, I've already seen results of like drastically less use of screen time, um, not grabbing my phone as often to kind of kill time. It's been a lot easier for me to just like leave the phone somewhere in the house while I'm doing other stuff and just be like, I'll get to it when I get to it. Like, I don't really care. So that's been a huge thing for me as well to sort of wean myself off that. I think my goal is still to get down to a dumb phone, um, probably a flip phone. I don't know if I would want the light phone. I don't know if I'd want. I had a Wise phone for a hot second too, and I really didn't like the Wise phone. Not for any functionality purpose, but it was just too big. They just used the chassis of a smartphone. And like I don't want this big chunk of plastic and metal in my pants, I don't want to carry that stuff around. And so I sold it to someone else. So critique for Wise phones there. Um, make them smaller.
Yeah, the Wise phone could just be an app. Like, and
It's
I kind
that's
of
how it's
get the
designed
model,
though. Like
but
that's how
you,
it's designed. Because they just
yeah,
they just use an Android phone and then they kind of jailbreak it essentially and just override all the stuff and just make it their own UI and their own functionality.
right. I like with my when I had my flip phone in particular. I liked the feeling of sometimes I just leave it at home.
Yeah.
And then no, I would just like go somewhere. I would just get in my truck and I would just drive, and nobody in the world would know where I was. And that's like I think for men in particular, that's like a freeing feeling when nobody in the world knows where you are. I don't know what it is, but it's just like nobody knows what I'm doing. And like what I was doing was like driving just on a road. Like it wasn't like I was doing anything exciting, but like just like the freedom of like I'm gonna do what I want and nobody knows. Which is a little different now that I'm married, but also
Yeah, so at
it's
least someone needs to know. At least one person
yes,
needs to
people
know.
need to
Yeah.
know. But it is like yeah, like the attitude of our current culture, and then I think largely due to smartphones, is that like you owe everybody yourself at all times because they can text you or call you at any moment or
Hmm.
like track you or like all this stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
And like that's crazy. Like you should owe yourself at every moment to nobody and then at specific moments to specific people. So like when I'm in a room with somebody, I owe myself to that person, like to be present to that person. But I shouldn't owe myself to be present to like, I don't know, like somebody I never talked to that decides to text me at that moment. Like that's just not like I don't owe them anything. Um, like it would be good to text them back when I get a chance, I'm sure, right? But like it's just this attitude of you have to engage when people try to engage with you and when they're not in the room. And like that's so weird to think about it in that way. And so I think having a dumb phone, it helps me with that because yeah, there are times where like for work in particular, I need to be on call and like I need to be available to respond to something. And so I turn the ringer on my phone and I leave it in the other room.
Mm.
And if it like makes noise, I can go and look at it. And if it's something that needs to be dealt with, I deal with it. If not, I move on. Or there are times when the understanding is like I don't need to be on call for work. And in my head, like I owe myself to nobody but like the person I'm in the room with, which is more often than not my wife, right? Like so then I'm just going to be present with her and my phone's silent and in the other room and I don't even like think about it.
Yeah.
So I think that is like it sounds simple and like I don't mean to say this in like a prideful way, but like that's rare. It's like weird to think though that that's rare. Like that a lot of people just have their phones next to them at all times, and if they get a text, they respond to it or at least they look at it. Um, and I understand like there are situations where it's necessary that you look at your phone, but yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that the world expects this of us now.
Yeah, and I mean I'm in total agreement. And I've started a new job recently, and that job, other than like very rare events that we do in the weekends, like my weekends are my own, like completely. Like I don't have an on-call situation with my job, so like weekends and nights are really my own now, which has like let me be more comfortable in the method I'm doing with like making my iPhone almost a dumb phone. It's not really a dumb phone. I mean, the GPS is still useful. And I know like the light phone has GPS and the Wise phone has GPS. Um, but yeah, just like the comfortability of like uh, the only person that I care about having 24/7 access to me is my wife, and she's in the house with me, so I don't my phone's away, and that's how it is, you know. Or like I can yeah, like you were saying, like I can leave my phone in a different room. The ringer's on, so yes, if it makes a noise, I can go see to see if it's worth, my immediate attention. But otherwise, yeah, I don't really care about because there's no one right now. I don't have anyone right now who's dependent upon me in an emergency situation. I think that's the other thing too. I don't have, other than my wife, someone in that situation nearby. So it's like if I'm getting a call, there's no way it's an emergency. I guess it could be, but it's such an off chance that it would be that I'm not really actively concerned about it. Um, and so yeah, like what you're saying is just you owe the time to the person in front of you, which same for me is more often than not, my wife. And so that's been helpful in transitioning. And my next step in weaning myself off is probably get a flip phone. um, and swap sims on weekends. Potentially swap sims whenever I get off work in general. But definitely on weekends, especially on weekends when we're traveling. Because my wife has a smartphone and she doesn't have a problem with overuse of her phone. She just like doesn't care about it. Um, so like her phone would have GPS and stuff like that. So if we were traveling, we needed GPS, like we could just use her phone. But like for me, I have had, a life of unfiltered, unrestricted, uncensored access to the internet and technology. The only thing that restricted my technology access was that I didn't have my own money. So it was just whatever technology my parents were willing to purchase for me for birthdays or Christmas or whatever. Um, which so it's just like computers and video games really. But so for me, there's this I don't want to say like it's ingrained in my being that I need to use technology, but I'm so used to technology. I'm so used to it being a normal thing. Like even when pre-social media, like to me, my life was online because my friend group in school was the same type of way. So what did we do? Well, I went to school and then we didn't like go hang out. I mean, we did. We hung out in person and stuff sometimes, but that wasn't the default. The default was we go home, we go on the computer or we go on Xbox or something, and we talked to each other there. And that was how we socialized. That was how we had our life outside of school, was all online. And so for me, that was so ingrained in how to treat technology of like, oh, if I don't have this, I don't have those relationships. Even though they were real relationships in real life, and we did stuff in real life, and we saw each other at school at the time. There's just the idea of, well, how we do the non-school related relationships was by talking to each other online all the time. And that's how it would happen if it was, I mean like MSN Messenger kind of stuff, right? Before smartphones, in texting even, you know, we had 24, well, not 24-hour access. I mean, if the person was on the computer, they weren't on the computer. But if they were on the computer, you had access to them and you messaged them and they usually messaged you back. And if you're playing video games together, you're on an Xbox Live Party and you're chatting to each other the entire time. Before you know it, you've been playing a video game for 4 hours, but you've been talking to friends, right? So it feels like you've been socializing, not necessarily playing a video game for 4 hours. And so that was sort of how I grew up. And that's sort of the transition out of that, I've been making for the past several years. I don't do, well, no one does MSN Messenger anymore, but that's just texting now or Discord or whatever messaging app people use. And then for terms of video games, I don't play them nearly as much like as I used to. So my friend groups don't do that anymore. Like you don't really play video games. Most of the guys I know don't play video games. So it's even like the friends I've made now, like our friendship isn't predicated on playing games together or having instant access to each other through instant messaging. It's like real solid friendships we made like in our desire to come to know Christ, right? Like as individuals and then like as friends. And that's where our friendship is rooted. And so yes, it's very nice that, you and I get to record this podcast remotely now because I've moved away from where we, became friends and stuff. But, our friendship's not really like we can go a week or two or however long in between and I don't feel like well, we're not friends anymore because we're not talking all the time, or because we're not messing each other all the time, we're texting each other all the time. Because that's not what our friendship is relying upon. So for me, that was like a big part of it, like growing up, and why the break I think has been a little bit harder for me. Though I'm getting there, getting there.
I have a typewriter. I just like when people know that. Just like showing it off. I also have one of our mutual friends, I don't know if you remember this, but when we lived together, he gave us like an old rusty typewriter that he found in an antique store.
Yes, I do remember that.
It was like beyond repair. And
Did,
it was sitting in our basement, and I just moved out of that house. And it's been sitting in the trunk of my car for like the past few months because I didn't
yeah,
know what to do with it.
yeah.
But then I've like been in my car and I kind of feel cool. Like nobody knows that it's in my car, but I just feel cool having it. And it doesn't work. But I do have a separate typewriter that does work, and I will utilize on occasions. Um, but there's just something so cool about a typewriter. It makes me want to write.
I 100% agree with you. I want a typewriter because I keep telling myself that the reason why I don't write as much as I want to is because I don't have a typewriter. So
Not true.
I know. So I know it's just like an excuse making thing. Um, though I have gotten better at actually writing, uh, like and not making that excuse of, well, I don't have a typewriter. But I thought what was funny was kind of going on the whole like we don't need to instant message each other for friendship. You know, we've pen palled each other. We're pen pals. And I appreciate that the first letter you sent me was typewritten. And he said, I think going forward, I'm going to use handwriting because typewriting's annoying.
Yeah. It's so impractical. It's
It's,
slow. It's like I'm most likely to make errors, and yeah, it's just not practical at all, but it's fun to do. And it's fun to know that I've done it more
yeah.
than
Oh,
it's
I
fun
get
to
that.
do.
I get that. And if it was, I'm sure if you were trained on it or like grew up with it, it would be a totally different story. Because you would get a
Right.
feel for the clicks, you get a feel for the weight behind the key presses, you get a feel for the speed you can actually go. And it'd be more of like second nature. But I know for me, because I've used typewriters too, yes, it's slow and clunky, and the rate at which I'm trying to type what's in my mind, I need like a keyboard, like a computer keyboard, because that's what I grew up on, that's what I'm used to, and that's what all my muscle memory's attached to. And so for that, it's like, yeah, that can maintain speed, that flows, that works, you know. And handwriting, I love handwriting more than anything, but that's also slow. At least compared to like how like I can't write as fast as I think. And so I'm like playing catch up or slowing down and then I get a hand cramp and then it's annoying and then I just get frustrated. Um, but there's these free write devices that are basically like keyboards with a tiny screen and the whole purpose is you just type into them and it like saves the files via cloud or something and then it loads up as like a Word doc. And it's supposed to be a distraction free writing like device, but they're freaking expensive. They're like several $100s for what's essentially a keyboard with a writing program built in. Um,
Yeah,
so
they have
that's
like
yeah,
old ones. I've looked at this because they have like because apparently this used to be a thing like before, at least before I was alive, where like you had like the typewriter and then you had like when computers are coming out, you had like just word processors. So it
yeah,
was like it looked like an old computer, but it just like had word processor on it. Um, but then they did come out with like portable word processors. So like you can go on eBay and find like a portable word process, which is what essentially this free write thing is.
yeah.
And you could just like and they're like they look really weird because it's like a keyboard and then there's like a little LCD screen with like one line of text and you can like write and then you just see one line at a time, which I think would not go well for me, but you should look into those.
I'll take a look. I mean, what I need is just something to just write. My other problem with writing, and this is something I've just struggled with, and it is a well, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here. It's not a cross, but it's like a habit. It's a habit you have to break if you're trying to write a lot or trying to even just be a better writer, is editing while I'm typing. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to just let it all out, let it sit, then you look back on it, then you make your edits, you know. Um, and I struggle with that. I very much want to edit as I write, not just grammatically or spelling, but just, you know, as I write the idea out, I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't like that. So let me go back and change it. And it's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. And it's also a good idea not to just erase everything you decide you don't want to go with, but like keep it all there because it's all parts in the path, you know. But that's
Yeah,
we're going down the writing rabbit hole right now, and that's not part of where we're trying to go right now. But
not at all, but I'm gonna say something else about it. I am not a good writer and I kind of want to be a good writer. I
Mhm.
actually don't know how badly I want to be a good writer. I just kind of enjoy writing. And like about like 6 or 7 months ago, I just started writing for fun, and I've just been doing it.
Yeah.
Some of it and most of it is really bad, but I've just been doing it, and I enjoy it. I think it's a fun thing, and that's how you like get good at something is you
Yeah.
just do it.
You just do it. Yeah. Especially writing, because everyone's looking for like, how do I become a good writer? Two things. One, read. Two, write. That's it. There's no other magic to it, you know? And then when you write, write honestly. I guess maybe that's the other thing, you know? Which is why I appreciate Hemingway so much because that's what he does. Oh gosh.
What was that? Oh gosh, we're gonna start talking about Hemingway now.
No, no, sorry. I didn't realize that was loud enough to get picked up. No,
Uh,
my bad. Ignore that. I'll edit that in post. No, I won't. I'll totally not know where this is in the recording things.
So I think our to transition this into back to the vision of the podcast, I think I have a blog, first of all. Well, I don't like to call it a blog, a series of articles um, that I write. That's where my like random writings go to. But I think in my vision for this podcast, on our website, we're going to hopefully have a blog as well, and sort of ideas that are related to the theme of the podcast that maybe will not end up as podcast episodes. I would find myself, and I think you as well, would find yourself writing up little blog posts as well to be put on our website at analogcatholic.com.
Yes, I think we're gonna wrap this episode up just because, this was really more supposed to be just an introduction to the podcast and to us, and to sort of our train of thought here. And each topic we kind of touched on here is probably going to get its own dedicated episode. Phones in general, writing, uh, typewriting, who knows? The cotton gin. We'll go we'll go down that rabbit hole. So everything there, that's the point of this podcast is the perspectives between Ben and I, the lives we've lived, and we'll go deeper into our different upbringings and how that's affected our viewpoints and our perspective on these things. We're not twins. We didn't have the exact same upbringing, and just going into it. That's it. And like he was saying, there's gonna be a blog aspect where we're gonna, write out things, maybe more long form, maybe short form. I think we definitely will have like a recommended technology tab. We'll have, our recommended movies and shows. And I think, I don't know if this is a big goal of ours. It's definitely a goal of ours, maybe a medium-sized goal. Is I think what we're lacking really is like a solid, good, virtuous, not even necessarily Catholic, not even necessarily Christian, just like a virtuous rating system for media because it's so vague right now. And what the culture decides is fitting for a 13-year-old or 14-year-old or 16-year-old or whatever is probably not the same as what someone who's trying to raise, their children well in a Catholic household or even just like a Christian or virtuous household. And so maybe a more accurate representation of the contents of some piece of media in a more elaborate rating system. That's something I'm really looking forward to, um, in particular. So Ben, I don't know if that's, one of your goals or not, but that's definitely one of my goals is to get that hammered out.
Yeah, I think that will take a lot of trial and error, but I think that's great. And I think especially, yeah, making the media conversations a part of our podcast, but also I think part of the blog as well. Like I think we talked about like we'd watch a movie and then we'd talk about it on the podcast, but I think it'd also be great if we like individually brought our thoughts to the table about movies or TV shows we were watching without
Right.
the other person. And I think again, using that to develop that rating system, I think would benefit us and society greatly.
Society for sure.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and I think just going off that, like one thing in particular is I still do play video games, not as much as I used to, and it's more of a when I have like nothing else on my plate sort of thing, and I have the freedom to do it for like an hour or so here or there. So in that instance, like if I decided to comment on something video game related, it's gonna be more than likely in the blog post because otherwise it'll just be an episode of me talking to Ben because I know Ben doesn't. I know you don't play video
No,
games.
I'm not a gamer.
No, you're not a gamer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, thank you for joining us on the first ever episode of Analog Catholic.
You're gonna say the old name, weren't you?
I was,
Yeah, I can
you
tell.
know,
I also wanted to say it. It's so ingrained, it's so muscle memoried. Um, yeah, so thank you again for joining us for Analog Catholic. Remember to check out analogcatholic.com for any updates.
and the shop,
Analogcatholic.com. Yeah.
shop,
Is it
and like,
slash shop or is it shop.analogcatholic?
I cannot guarantee
All
any,
right.
but just if you go to analogcatholic.com, you can find it.
Yep, there you go. Go to analogcatholic.com, click the shop, and that's it. We hope to see you again. I'm Rob.
And I've been
This has been
Analog Catholic.
nice.
I think we should keep that.
F you.